He was born dirt poor in a Kentucky log cabin in 1809. His father was a struggling farmer, his mother a quiet, devout woman, and his world was one of hardship, loss, and backbreaking labor. Few could have looked at that frail, awkward frontier boy and imagined that he would one day hold the Union together during its darkest trial. Abraham Lincoln's life was a story of resilience, tragedy, strangeness, and triumph so remarkable that even today it sounds almost mythical. But it was all real. This is the unbelievable life of Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln's childhood was steeped in the raw, unforgiving life of the American frontier. His family moved constantly, chasing land and opportunities in Kentucky, Indiana, and later Illinois. His father, Thomas Lincoln, scratched out a living as a farmer and carpenter, but he never found much success. When Abraham was just 9 years old, tragedy struck. His mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, died suddenly of milk sickness, a mysterious illness contracted from drinking contaminated cow's milk. The boy was devastated. Neighbors recalled him weeping uncontrollably, retreating into himself. But he soon found solace in something unusual for a child with barely any formal schooling: books. Lincoln's formal education added up to less than a single year, scattered across his youth. But he was hungry for knowledge. He borrowed books from anyone who would lend them. By firelight, after long days of work, he devoured Aesop's fables, Shakespeare, the Bible, and histories of Washington and the Revolution. Words became his refuge, and soon, his weapon. But Lincoln wasn't just a bookworm. Out on the frontier, physical strength mattered, and young Abe proved himself with his long arms and wiry frame. He became a skilled rail splitter, swinging his axe with tireless rhythm, earning wages to support his family, and he developed a reputation for wrestling. Lincoln's height, 6'4", and his enormous reach made him formidable. Local lore is full of tales of him throwing down challengers in rough-and-tumble matches. In one famous story, he faced off against a bully known as Jack Armstrong and threw him to the ground so decisively that Armstrong's gang soon befriended him. Lincoln's strength earned respect, but it was his sense of fairness, his refusal to fight dirty or abuse his size, that made people admire him. Alongside his toughness, Lincoln grew into a storyteller. Around the fire or in a tavern, he would spin yarns and crack jokes, leaving whole rooms roaring with laughter. This gift of humor, combined with his knack for plain but powerful language, would serve him later in politics. He could charm, disarm, and persuade with words, always hiding deep seriousness behind a twinkle in his eye. As Lincoln grew older, ambition tugged at him. He tried his hand at business, opening a general store with a partner. It failed. He enlisted in a local militia during the Black Hawk War, though he never saw combat. He then turned to politics. His first run for the Illinois state legislature ended in defeat, but he didn't quit. On his second attempt, he won. In Springfield, Illinois, he studied law and earned a reputation as one of the most honest and capable lawyers in the region. His nickname, Honest Abe, came not from saintly perfection, but from his unusual refusal to cut corners. He often refused cases if he thought his client was clearly in the wrong. In court, he was shrewd but fair, and his skill at simplifying complex arguments into plain speech won over juries time and again. His personal life, though, was marked by heartbreak. Lincoln's early love, Anne Rutledge, died of illness, leaving him devastated. Some said it plunged him into depression so deep that friends feared for his safety. For years, he wrestled with bouts of melancholy. Later, he married Mary Todd, a sharp, ambitious woman from a wealthy Kentucky family. Their marriage was stormy. Mary was prone to tempers and insecurities, while Lincoln often withdrew into brooding silences, but their bond endured through triumph and tragedy. Lincoln's national career began slowly. He served one term in Congress in the late 1840s, where he opposed the Mexican-American War, a stance that cost him popularity. Afterward, he returned to his law practice and seemed destined for obscurity, but history was about to call him back. By the 1850s, the issue of slavery was tearing the United States apart. The expansion of slavery into new territories set North against South. Lincoln, who had long spoken of slavery as a moral evil, found his voice rising to national prominence. His debates with Senator Stephen Douglas, particularly during the Illinois Senate race of 1858, catapulted. Though he lost the election, his clear, principled opposition to the spread of slavery caught the attention of the entire country. His words, simple, logical, heartfelt, echoed far beyond Illinois. In 1860, against all odds, the little-known lawyer from Illinois was elected President of the United States. The nation was already fracturing. Southern states saw his victory as a threat to slavery and seceded from the Union. By the time Lincoln took office, the Civil War was at hand. Lincoln's presidency was a crucible. He faced enormous pressures from all sides. Abolitionists accused him of moving too slowly against slavery. Conservatives accused him of going too far. Newspapers mocked him. Generals defied him. Politicians plotted against him. At times, even his own cabinet doubted him. He bore it all with remarkable patience, often diffusing rage with humor. He once said, "I have been driven many times upon my knees by the overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go." The war tested Lincoln not only as a leader, but as a father. In 1862, his beloved 11-year-old son, Willie, died of illness in the White House. Lincoln was inconsolable. Visitors described him wandering the halls late at night, grief etched on his face. Mary was nearly broken by the loss. The war outside and the sorrow within pressed down on him with unbearable weight. Yet he carried on. In 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring freedom for enslaved people in Confederate territory. It was a bold gamble. It turned the war from a struggle merely to preserve the Union into a crusade for human liberty. The decision reshaped the conflict and gave it a moral center that has defined Lincoln's legacy ever since. 2 years later, with Union forces under Ulysses S. Grant finally grinding down the Confederacy, Lincoln won re-election. His second inaugural address was a masterpiece of reconciliation. He spoke not of triumph, but of healing. With malice toward none, with charity for all, he said, the nation must bind up its wounds and move forward. Those words, spoken as the war neared its end, revealed the depth of his vision. Not vengeance, but unity. But Lincoln's life was shadowed by a strange streak of superstition. He often spoke of dreams and omens. In the final days of his life, he described to friends a dream in which he wandered the White House and saw his own body lying in state. They laughed it off as his imagination, but Lincoln seemed unsettled, as though he knew his end was near. On April 14, 1865, just days after Robert E. Lee's surrender at Appomattox, Lincoln attended a play at Ford's Theater in Washington. There, as he sat in his box with Mary by his side, actor and Confederate sympathizer John Wilkes Booth slipped inside and fired a single shot into the back of the president's head. Lincoln never regained consciousness. He died the next morning, April 15th, becoming the first American president to be assassinated. His death plunged the nation into mourning. Millions lined the tracks as his funeral train carried his body from Washington to Springfield, Illinois. The boy from the log cabin was laid to rest in the heart of the prairie he had once walked as a poor rail splitter. Lincoln's legacy has only grown in the years since. He is remembered as the Great Emancipator, the savior of the Union, and one of the most eloquent leaders in history. But he is also remembered as a deeply human man, haunted by sadness, lifted by humor, driven by principle, and strengthened by adversity. From the log cabin to the White House, his story is almost mythic. And yet the unbelievable part is that every word is true. Abraham Lincoln's life reminds us that greatness can come from the humblest of beginnings. That character matters more than privilege. That leadership demands patience, humility, and courage in the face of impossible odds. He was not perfect, no man is, but he was steadfast when it mattered most. And in that steadfastness, he preserved a nation.